Okay, here we go. Good morning, folks. Good afternoon. Good evening. I'm not sure what time it is you're tuning in, but I hope you're having a good one. Welcome to the show. Episode number 2. Number dos. Uno. Dos. Da. 1, 2. I think that's all the languages I know how to say two in. Welcome to episode number 2 of the Voice of the Hawkeyes podcast. Let me try that again. Welcome to episode number 2 of the Voice of the Hawkeyes podcast. That's right, I'm Andrew Kulha, and I can speak English, believe it or not. Let me take a sip of coffee here. That just might help it. There we go. Let me tell you, I think I have a problem, and it has to do with coffee. The other night, me and my fiancée were out with a couple friend of ours, a friend couple, I think that would be the way to say it. Great married couple. They just bought a new house, invited us over, and we're hanging out and talking. And Danielle, who's my fiance, starts talking about how much coffee I drink, and she'll make fun of me sometimes because literally I'll drink about a pot to a pot and a half of coffee every day, and to me that's normal. To me that's just, hey, I got to get through the day. I got to keep my mind stimulated. And I just need some coffee. And so I just kind of brushed off like, hey, we all need something, and I need my cafe. Well, apparently that's not normal, because our friends looked at us and literally just a look of terror. I think looked at me, don't want to bring Danielle into my horrible addiction, I guess, to coffee. But my friend looks at me and he goes, "Are you kidding me?" Almost as if he's scared for my life. And I'm sitting here thinking, it's just coffee. Is this okay? So here I am now worried. Every sip of coffee I take, which I need to take, by the way, especially if I'm going to be here and entertain you, the Voice of the Hawkeyes listener, the Iowa fan, I'm going to need my Java. And I don't even know why they call it Java. I just call it coffee. I'm going to need my sweet, sweet coffee. But apparently I have a problem. So we're just going to take another sip here. So, let's get to the show. On today's show, want to talk about a lot of things. Obviously, signing day was just a couple days ago. 2014 recruiting cycle has come and gone. I was all set. Have about 21 commitments. Actually, you can't have about 21 commitments. You can only have 21. It's not as if there's an about person. You have to have an actual number there. So 21 commitments, 19 of whom are signed, sealed, and delivered right now. 2 more, Ross Reynolds, who's a guard, and Torrey Hendrick, who's a JUCO defensive end, are expected to join the class later on. Hendrick in June had some red tape. Wouldn't allow him to take visits or sign anywhere until about June. And Reynolds right now is a gray shirt, and Iowa's trying to find him a spot. So they're obviously looking for some attrition there with the scholarship numbers. So, anyhow, we'll talk a little bit about the 2014 class. Wrote an article today called 2014 Iowa Superlatives. And basically just picked a couple titles, offensive MVP, defensive MVP, most potential, sleeper, yada yada, and wrote a little bit about the players in this class and how I see them kind of fitting into the program and what they can bring to the program. So we'll talk about that. Also want to talk about some Iowa basketball, and that's a very exciting thing right now. I know a lot of our listeners, a lot of our readers have wanted basketball recruiting coverage, and hoops coverage in general. Iowa is a very exciting team this year. Madly inconsistent. Sometimes they play like they're one of the best teams in the nation, and other times they just don't show up. They can't shoot for some reason half the time, get cold, and that's weird, right? And I understand that sometimes you just can't get it in the bucket, but Iowa's a very interesting team this year. Coach Fran McCaffrey's a good coach, heated dude. He'll yell at you, but I think he's the guy for this team, and I really like what the team has. Roy Devin Marble is obviously a star, and I think when he's on, this team is very hard to beat. When I was moving the ball, passing it around, running the transition. I was a very hard team to beat. So I want to talk a little bit about them as well. So sit back, relax, and let's head to the first topic. Okay, let's talk hoops. Now, I'm a football guy. Let's not get that wrong. I am a football guy through and through. I coached it. I watch it almost every day, it seems like. I scout it. I love football. But believe it or not, my first true love in regard to sports was basketball. That's what I grew up playing. My dad, my parents, they put me in a basketball league early on, played it with my best friends. So I absolutely adore the game of basketball, and it's cool for me, and this is just a little personal thing, but it's cool to be in a position where, once again, I'm covering the sport of basketball, and it's cool that I was in actually a good basketball program. That's huge to me. And the other night, a big team played a very big game. Iowa defeated Michigan, the Wolverines, 85-67 at Carver Hawkeye. That's a huge win for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Not only was it redemption of sorts for the first time the two played when Iowa went up to Ann Arbor, but just the way that this team played, they finally put it all together. And that's the first time since I've been covering this team that I've seen what Iowa basketball can do when everything is clicking, when they're running the offense that they want to run, when their star players, Roy Devin Marble, Aaron White, even Gabriel Olasani off the bench, when everybody's playing the role that they've, do I say destined? I guess, yeah, that they've been destined to play. This is what Fran McCaffery was looking at, when he put this team together. And I think this was the vision, what we saw against Michigan on a few nights ago. Was it Saturday afternoon? So great game, like I said, 85-67 with Iowa on top, and of course it all started with Devin Marble. He put up 26 points. This guy was on fire. Missed his first shot, but I think he then hit 4 3-pointers in the first half. Don't quote me there, but he was draining it from three, really all over the place. Finished with 2 assists, a rebound, but really it was all about his scoring. And I think that he was the catalyst for this Iowa team in this game. Going against a guy like Nick Stauskas, who was a very prolific scorer in his own right, even though he only scored 10 points that night. Somebody had to step up for Iowa and kind of put the team on their shoulders, and that guy is Marble. And, he's obviously one of the best players in the country, I dare say. Senior, he's a leader. He's a great shooter. He can attack the rim. He can play in transition. He really has everything that you look for in a guy who's going to step up in a big game. And, there's a saying out there in the sports world that big players make big plays in big games. And if that's not a saying, I coin it right now. And I definitely think Marble deserves a ton of credit for, putting Iowa on his back, setting the tone, and just letting the rest of the team follow. I mean, I wrote about how it was like he was in the zone for that first half. He got most of his points in the first half, I believe. He scored about 24 of 26 in the first half. Not 100% certain there. I'll make sure to check that out and let you know. But he was incredible. And when you have a team that does rely so much on rhythm, that relies so much on getting hot and running the floor, you can't ask for a better leader and somebody who's better equipped to lead that team besides Marble. So very impressive. I was just very impressed about just the way they came out. I was impressed with the crowd. The arena a couple weeks ago against Michigan State, it was rocking. That was a huge game as well. Obviously, Iowa couldn't capitalize. This time around against Michigan, it was something else. It was, the crowd was behind the team, coach was fired up, and Michigan, they took that one punch. As a coach, I always used to talk to my kids about, especially running backs, you're going to get punched in the face, and not literally, hopefully, unless you're Garrett Blount or whoever he punched. You guys remember that? Anyhow, you're going to get punched in the face figuratively as far as, playing sports. and in life, really. And that's why I think sports is such a great teacher, is that sometimes you need to learn how to respond and how to respond to adversity. And Michigan got hit in the face by Marble. The first couple minutes came out firing, came out hot. Iowa looked good, and they just couldn't respond. Stauskas could never get going, and credit Iowa's defense for that. And even the players that they did have going just couldn't do it, And I think this is great for Iowa moving forward. You definitely got to see what they can do as a whole team, as a complete package. Obviously, off the bench, you had Olasani, and McCabe played pretty well as well. Oglesby came in, and did he get a 3? I think he definitely got a couple points there, 3 points. So you can see what this team can do as a complete package. Obviously, they don't lose much when they go to the bench. Adam Woody, he threw down that nice dunk, shushed the haters, those haters out there. And, White even played a good game too. And really what I'm looking forward to is the moment when both White and Marble get on the same page at the same time and both get hot. Because if that happens, Iowa, I think they're one of the best teams in the nation. When both those guys are on their game, they're moving the ball, they're running the court, and the bench is making an impact. So overall, very impressive game. Looking forward to seeing what the Hawkeyes can do coming up. Let's see what their schedule has here coming up. I know they do have some time off. I will play at Penn State on February 15th, so they've got a little bit of time to rest. And hopefully that momentum continues. Hopefully they can keep kicking butt and taking names. So, yeah, very, very exciting. And by the way, Marble did score 22 of 26 in the first half. So that he was just in the zone. What an incredible game from the Iowa senior and leader of this team. All right, well, that's enough hoops talk. Let's take a quick break here. And, of course, we'll talk a little bit about recruiting. Let's talk some Iowa football recruiting. Man, got a little frog in my throat there. It's strange, and this has nothing to do with recruiting, but how does one get a frog in their throat? Where did that saying come from? That's just a very interesting thought, and that's something I will ponder later. Let's get back on track, though. Talk a little bit about this Iowa 2014 class. Wrote an article today called Class Superlatives. Talk a little bit about some of the players who I think will be impact makers. We went through different categories: offensive MVP, defensive MVP, most versatile, huge upside, sleeper star, stuff like that. So that's a cool article. I think it is free, so make sure you check that out on Voice of the Hawkeyes. Let's go ahead real quick and break down a couple of these categories. Offensive MVP from this class, I went ahead with Jay Shield, 3-star athlete, played quarterback for his high school, but pretty sure the kid's going to play receiver for Iowa. I think he could probably make an impact as a Wildcat quarterback if the Hawkeyes were to choose to go into that package, if they were to put a package like that out there. Shield's a great athlete, 6 foot, 170 pounds, explosive kid. He's got great speed, and I think he's going to be a guy who can really make an impact with the ball in his hands, whether it be on special teams or he can be a guy you throw a quick bubble screen out to, a quick slant route, and just see if he can pick up yards. And he has that shiftiness, but also explosive running ability to pick up those very tough yards. So he's a guy that I think will be very good for Iowa. Defensive MVP, Torrey Hendrick, who's a 3-star JUCO defensive end. Like I talked about earlier, not yet signed with Iowa, but he's expected to be there. This guy, we talked about him a little bit in episode 1. He's going to be good. He's going to be very good. He's a big defensive end, put on some weight at the JUCO level, but he's still explosive. He can still turn the corner and be an elite pass rusher. But that extra weight is what really makes him impressive, because he'll be able to not only be a pass rusher, but be able to help out against the run, come down the line, and stop a running back before he hits the hole. So I think Hendrick is going to end up being the defensive MVP of this class. Most underrated. This is a very interesting topic, a very interesting category, and I went with Terrence Harris, who is a strong side defensive end out of New Jersey. Both the 24/7 Sports Composite and 24/7 Sports had him as a 2-star, and I think most would agree, and I know we've had this conversation on the VOTH board, that Terrence Harris is definitely underrated. He's a tall 6'3", 250 pounds. He's got the size. He's got the frame. Going to add a little bit more weight, to play defensive end at the Big Ten level. But he's a great closer, good speed coming down the edge. He'll be able to come down the line, much like Hendrick, and make an impact against the run. And I just like this guy's length and his closing speed. He has great technique. Already has a technique that you'd expect from a college defensive end in regard to he's got a nice rip move. He really uses his hands well. So I'm excited to see what Harris is going to be able to do for Iowa. And he's a guy that I think you need to look out for. Huge upside. And this is a kid, another defensive end, Matt Nelson. Now, Matt's an interesting recruit because he can play tight end. He could probably play offensive tackle. He has the size for it at 6'8", 250 pounds, but Iowa likes him at defensive end. And just talking about Harris a minute there ago, the one thing you really need at defensive end is length. And why is that important, you ask? It's because you need to be able to one, not get reached on the end. One of the defensive end's most important responsibility is to set the edge, not let anybody get outside of his outside shoulder, on an outside run, a bootleg, anything of the sort. And offensive tackles on anything going to the outside, they're taught to take a big reach step to their outside in an effort to try to hook that defensive end and in turn set the edge. That's basically the football way of describing it. So as a defensive end, you need to be able to not only have length, to take a quicker first step, a longer, deeper first step, get upfield and set that edge, but you need to have the hands to really extend, get your hands out in the shoulder pads and the chest plate and push back, really set that edge. And I think that Nelson has that. He obviously has that at 6'8", 250 pounds. So I'm very excited to see what he can bring to the table. As far as the MVP recruiter, and this is a coach's category, I had to give it to Chris White, Iowa's running backs and special team coach. I did write an article about him on signing day. He was the guy who was able to flip Miles Taylor. He was his primary recruiter. And obviously Taylor was a very big flip from Georgia Tech, plays safety. I think he has a ton of potential. So Iowa did a great job bringing him in on the home stretch of signing day. And credit goes to Chris White for that. And you also just look and see what he did in the East Coast, New Jersey, Philadelphia, D.C., that whole area, the DMV, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, really starting to build some nice pipelines there. And in recruiting, pipelines are just as important as anything. So really, really impressed with what Coach Chris White was able to do in the 2014 class, 14 cycle, and I'm excited to see what he'll do later on. So make sure you go check out that article. It's on Voice of the Hawkeyes right now. It's free, and it's a fun read, if I may say so myself. I chuckled once or twice. No, actually, it's not that kind of fun. It's entertaining, though, and that's what I'm here to do. So, yes, sir. All right, well, let's take a minute here to regroup, collect our thoughts, and I'll send you out and say goodbye. Okay, that's it. Episode number 2 is in the books. I can't even believe we're on episode number 2 already. It felt like just National Signing Day that we were doing episode number 1. Crazy times, crazy train. That'd be a fun song to end the show with. I'm not sure. Does it have a... Yeah, I think we can do that. We'll do some Crazy Train. Do you want Oz? Yeah. We're going to do some Crazy Train to finish off the show. Listen, everybody, I really appreciate you listening to the podcast. Iowa fans, Hawkeye fans, you guys are the best. Voice of the Hawkeyes readers, Voice of the Hawkeyes podcast listeners, really appreciate everything that you do. Appreciate you listening to my voice, allowing me to give my opinions and my thoughts, and allowing me the space to entertain you. Very happy about that. So make sure you tune in. A few days we'll be doing the next podcast. I'll make sure to promote that on the board, on the VOTH board, on Twitter. Again, thanks to 24/7 Sports for the great opportunities, and to all of you for listening. So, for Voice of the Hawkeyes, for 24/7 Sports, my name is Andrew Kulha, and I'll see you around.